Okay, this is the third big skill that is going to be really helpful when we get into our calculus parts of stuff, which is being able to rationalize expressions. And you've probably done rationalizing before when you were doing sine, cosine, tangent, and you would see like 1 over root 3, and to rationalize it, all you had to do was multiply by root 3 over root 3 to each side. Root 3 times root 3 is just going to give you 3. And 1 times root 3, 1 times anything is itself, so we have root 3, and you have root 3 over 3. And that comes up with the unit circle, and that's probably where you've done a lot of rationalizing. But we can actually we can have functions and equations that rationalizing is helpful for. And not always in the way you've seen before. These two examples are probably similar to what you've seen before. But just starting with this 3 over root x, this is really the same problem as what we did here. All we're going to do is we're going to multiply the numerator and denominator by root x. This should be filled in. And 3 times root x, well, that doesn't make anything pretty, so we'll just put it as together, 3 root x divided by x, because the square root of something times the square root of itself makes the square root go away, which is kind of the point of rationalizing, is to make the square root, and what you've seen so far has been make the square root on the denominator go away. There are some times we'll actually rationalize the numerator to make the square root on the numerator go away, but I'll save that for later. But this next example is one that y'all will have to tell me if you've seen before, because I'm not sure. But if you have 3 over the square root of x plus 1, and our goal here is to still get rid of this square root. So the question is, what can we do to get rid of that square root? Well, we know that if we multiply by the square root, that makes it go away. And if I were to do a lesson on this, I would sort of explore what would happen here. But for the sake of time and to keep this short, this isn't going to make the square root go away exactly, because we're going to end up with, if we were to just do this, we would end up with 3 square root of x over x plus square root of x. And we still have a square root in the denominator. We don't want this. This is not good. That's not what we want. We want to get rid of that square root. We don't want any square roots in our denominator. So if we actually applied a little I forget what this is called, difference of squares. If we think about the difference of squares, that will leave it so that we don't have any middle term. So if I just subtract 1 here, all I'm going to be left with is a squared, which in this case, let me put the minus 1 on top too, don't want to forget that. We're going to get x, because the square root of x times the square root of x, or the square root of x squared, is just x, and then positive 1 minus 1, and our b is just 1 in this case, so we have minus 1 squared. 1 squared is just 1. And then on top, this doesn't simplify to anything pretty, And I'm actually just going to leave it in factored form. I'm not going to bother to distribute the 3. There are some times where you'll need to do that, but I don't really want to talk about that until we get to it. For now, my focus is just on rationalizing. And so a word I want to introduce to you, or maybe remind you of if you haven't heard it before, is conjugate. And that's what we just did right here. A conjugate is just where you take your binomial, because this has 1, 2 terms, so by 2, and you multiply it by the same binomial, except you change the sign. You end up with a product that's a difference of squares. It could end up being another thing too, difference of cubes. Or I don't even know if that's called difference of cubes, but change the signs more. But for our case, we're just going to deal with binomials. So our conjugate, really, what we need to know about is change the sign in the middle. So instead of square root of x plus 1, we multiplied by the square root of x minus 1. We changed the sign that was in the middle. And that was multiplying by our conjugate. And we are gonna get to rationalizing pretty quickly, so hopefully you're ready for it.